Leave my child alone!
But you promised to give me!
Nelo was the daughter of Maza, a well-known palm wine tapper in the village. He was very good at his work and could climb the tallest palm trees to bring down the sweetest palm wine. But Maza had a problem. He loved to drink too much, and when he drank, he liked to boast. One evening, he sat in the busy village palm wine joint with other men. As they drank and talked loudly, Maza lifted his calabash of palm wine. Some of the wine spilled over his hands as he shouted proudly, "You think your daughters are special? My daughter Nelo can turn ordinary sand into golden beads." The villagers burst into loud laughter. Some of them laughed so hard that they almost spilled their own palm wine. What they did not know was that a messenger from the palace was standing quietly at the edge of the village. When he heard Maza's words, his eyes grew wide with surprise. Everyone knew the king loved wealth, and golden beads were very valuable in the palace. A girl who could turn sand into golden beads would be very important to him. The messenger quickly decided that this was news the king needed to hear. The next morning, guards from the palace arrived at Maza's house. They took Nelo and her father to the king's palace. When they arrived, the king looked angrily at Maza and then at Nelo. "Your father says you can turn sand into golden beads," the king said. "Show me that it is true. If you cannot do it, you will not leave this palace alive." Nelo's heart began to beat very fast. She had never turned sand into beads before. In fact, she did not know how to do it at all. But she had no choice. That night, Nelo was locked in a dark palace chamber filled with sand, and she wept. Suddenly, a strange wind blew through the cracks in the walls. A mysterious figure appeared, a small, wiry forest spirit with glowing eyes and an unsettling grin. "Why do you cry, lady?" he asked. "The king has ordered me to turn these sands into golden beads, or I won't leave the palace alive," Nelo said with tears in her eyes. "If I turn this sand into golden beads, what will you give me in return?" the spirit asked. Nelo removed her bracelet and gave it to him. "This will do," he said. The spirit began chanting a strange song. Sand to bead, bead to gold, secrets kept and secrets sold, promise given, promise tied, break the bond and none can hide. Slowly, glowing golden beads appeared and piled up in heaps. Nelo was happy. In the morning, the king came to see the golden beads. When he saw them, he was very surprised. But instead of letting Nelo go, his greed grew stronger. He took her to a bigger room in the palace that was filled with sand. "Turn all this sand into golden beads," the king ordered. Nelo felt very sad and began to cry. As she cried, the strange forest spirit appeared again. "If I help you turn this sand into golden beads," the spirit asked, "what will you give me in return?" Nelo slowly removed her necklace and gave it to him. The spirit accepted it and began his magic. Soon, the sand changed into shining golden beads. The next morning, when the king saw the beads again, his greed became even greater. He took Nelo to the largest room in the palace, which was completely filled with sand. "If you turn this sand into golden beads for the third time," the king said, "I will let you marry my son, Prince Mokoko." That night, Nelo cried again. Soon, the spirit returned, but this time he asked for something more serious. "If I help you one last time," he said slowly, "when you marry the prince, I will come back for your first child." Nelo was frightened, but she did not want to die, so she agreed. The spirit began his magic once again and chanted, "Sand to bead, bead to gold, secrets kept and secrets sold. By morning, the room was full of golden beads. The king was overjoyed. As he had promised, he gave Nelo in marriage to his son, Prince Mokoko. Years passed. Nelo and Prince Mokoko had a child, a baby boy with bright eyes like the morning sun. Nelo was happy and had forgotten about the promise she once made. But one quiet night, she heard a familiar voice singing, "Sand to bead, bead to gold, secrets kept and secrets sold. Promise given, promise tied, break the bond and none can hide." Suddenly, the forest spirit appeared in the room. "The child is mine," he said, pointing a thin finger at the baby. "You made a promise." Nelo's heart almost stopped. She held her son tightly. "Wait," she cried. "I will give you all the gold and precious stones in the world. Please do not take my son." The spirit laughed loudly. "A promise is a promise," he said. Nelo began to cry and beg him. After a moment, the spirit spoke again. "I will give you one chance," he said. "I am the great-great-grandchild of the spirit of the forest. If you can tell me the name of my great-great-grandfather, I will leave your child. I will give you 3 days," he added. Nelo was shocked. How could she possibly know the name of a spirit she had never heard of? Then the spirit disappeared into the night. "I will return in 3 days," his voice echoed. Nelo sat in her chamber with her baby in her arms, her heart heavy with fear. She didn't know what to do. At last, with tears in her eyes, she decided to run to the only person who might help her, her father, Maza. When she arrived at his home in the village, she explained everything. The promise she had made, the spirit's return, and the terrible challenge he had given her. Maza listened in silence. When she finished, she fell to her knees. "Father, please help me," she cried. "I cannot lose my son." Maza felt shame fill his heart. It was his drunken boasts that had brought all this trouble upon his daughter. "My child," he said softly, "this is my fault, and now it is my duty to make it right." But there was a problem. The place where the forest spirits gather lies far away, Maza explained. To reach it, I must travel across 7 mountains and 7 rivers. It takes 2 days to go and 2 days to return. "That is 4 days," Nelo whispered in despair. "But I only have 3. She began to cry again. Maza stood quietly for a moment, then suddenly his eyes brightened. "Perhaps there is still a way." He went into his small room and returned with an old leather pouch. Inside it was a fortified charm that his father had given him before his death. "This charm carries the strength of our ancestors," Maza said. He held it tightly and whispered ancient incantations over it. Then, without wasting another moment, he began his journey deep into the forest. For 3 days, Maza traveled through thick forests, crossed rushing rivers, and climbed steep mountains. Meanwhile, back in the palace, Nelo prayed day and night to the spirits of the land to protect her father. On the 3rd day, just before sunset, Maza finally returned. He looked exhausted and weak, his clothes torn from the journey. But he went straight to the palace. When Nelo saw him, she ran into his arms. "My daughter," Maza said, struggling to catch his breath. "I heard the spirit speaking deep in the forest." He leaned closer and whispered, "His great-great-grandfather's name is Ekwensu." Nelo's face lit up with relief and joy. She hugged her father tightly and immediately ordered the palace maids to prepare food and water for him. "Take care of my father," she told them. That very night, just as he had promised, the forest spirit returned to the palace. The night was quiet and dark. Suddenly, a cold wind blew through Nelo's room. The candles flickered and the room became very cold. Then, the forest spirit slowly appeared beside Nelo's bed. His glowing eyes shone in the darkness, and a crooked smile spread across his face. "Well, Queen Nelo," he said in a mocking voice, "the 3 days are over. Tell me, can you name my great-great-grandfather?" Nelo felt afraid, but she remembered her father's words. She stood up bravely and looked straight at the spirit. "Yes," she said calmly. "His name is Ekwensu." The spirit froze. His glowing eyes widened in shock. He could not understand how Nelo had discovered the secret name. "How did you know that?" he shouted. Then, with a screech that echoed through the palace, he vanished. The spirit was gone forever. Nelo quickly picked up her child and held him tightly in her arms. Tears of relief filled her eyes. Her son was safe. From that day on, Nelo lived happily with Prince Mukoko and their child. This story teaches that we should be careful with what we say. Maza's careless boasting caused a lot of trouble for his daughter. This teaches us that we should think before we speak, because our words can create problems for others. It also teaches that greed can lead to trouble. The king was not satisfied even after getting the golden beads. His greed made him demand more and more. The story also shows that promises are important. Nelo made a promise to the spirit, even though she was afraid. Promises should not be made lightly. And that is the story of Nelo and the spirit of the golden beads. What did you learn from Nelo's story? Remember, be careful with your words, keep your promises, and always be brave when protecting the people you love. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe now to hear more magical tales and lessons from around the world. I love you all.